All right, Mike Matthews,
That was
head honch over at Muscle for Life, back on the Pat Flynn Show. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, the self-styled boss.
Right. Yeah. Indeed. So good to have you here, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
We've been having a lot of really fun, interesting, off-the-wall conversations on your podcast. So that's been cool. And before we dive in, we're going to talk about concurrent training. What is the best way to combine cardio and weights, or running and weights? It's a hot topic. It's an important one. But before we do that, give us some updates. What have you been up to? You're working on a book currently. That's correct?
Yeah,
right?
So I guess theoretically I'm working on 2 right now. So I have this Simon & Schuster, this book I'm doing with them, Muscle for Life, 40 plus fitness, very newbie friendly, even more so than my existing stuff. I would say, and that is, I think my existing stuff is very newbie friendly in how I explain things, but take Bigger, Leaner, Stronger, right? Which is, your basic kind of push-pull legs, strength and bodybuilding hybrid type of approach.
Right.
And that works great, of course, for many people. But what if a dude is 55 years old and he's never lifted weights, and maybe he's 65 even, and he's very overweight, and he has pain in his joints? You could tell that guy to go start squatting and deadlifting. Mark Ripito, that's what he would say. He would say, yeah, man up and grab a barbell. Mm-hmm. And that can work, but that's probably not the best place. If we're talking about risk for reward ratio, and also it's just daunting when you're very out of shape to be told to go do heavy sets of 5 or 6 or 7 or even 8, right? True. And so it's a bit more appropriate to start somebody like that with a program that's challenging but not grueling, right? And Bigger, Leaner, Stronger is challenging for a 20-year-old, but it can be grueling for the 65-year-old who's very out of shape. Right. And so this book will be for that 65-year-old. It'll have a beginner program for somebody like that. It also will have an intermediate program, which, let's say the age is not so important. Let's say the dude is 65, and it also has programs for women too. But let's say this person is 65 and they've done a bit of resistance training, and maybe they do a little bit here and there, and they're out of shape, but they're not in terrible shape. They're not as fit as they once were. Well, then that person could start a bit higher in terms of difficulty than the former, right? And then there's an advanced program, which is kind of similar to Bigger, Leaner, Stronger, which is men, and Thinner, Leaner, Stronger. That's a book I have for women. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a light version of those programs. And that's intended for the person. Again, age is not so important, but this would be the person who's in decent shape. They probably do some sort of resistance training a couple of times per week. Maybe it's a weekend warrior, but they've built a baseline of strength. They're stronger than the average person, and they have a bit more muscle than the average person. And so for that person, then you can challenge them a bit more than you could challenge the previous 2. So that's that book. And on the diet side of things, it teaches meal planning, but in a way that you don't need to use any utensils, right? So you can eyeball portions of food. That's a neat
idea. I like that. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I thought that made sense, right? So it's actually using your hand. So using your palm, using your fist, using your thumb for different types of foods.
And eat with utensils, right?
What's that? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, if that'd be a marketing ploy, right? It's more anabolic if you eat with your hands.
Right. No, in fact,
that's how our ancestors ate, and they were all jacked and lived forever. So
as we know, right? That's what I thought at first when he first said without utensils. I'm like, wow. This is like a no fork eating program.
That would get media coverage. You get some media play out of that. Yeah, right. You just have to make up some bullshit. Specifically some weighing and measuring utensils, right? Yeah. So you don't need to get out the food scale or the cups and you know what I mean? And so I came up with different categories of food and say, okay, so a palm of lean protein. And that is, you have different types of lean protein. Here's what that generally comes out to, a fist of whole grains. And you have different types of whole grains that again have more or less the same macros and calories, and you don't have to be perfect with any of it. So anyways, I'm excited to get that out because again, I think it's going to be a very easy kind of on ramp to the more advanced stuff, which people can get to if they want to take it that far. And so working on that, and that's, let's see, I just finished the first pages review, got all of that stuff over to the editors I'm working with, and then come, I guess, the second pages where I just confirm that they did everything that they needed to do. This is my first time going through the process with a traditional publisher. So we're close at least on the production side of things. And then I'm going to have to get into marketing mode probably in the next month or so and really start putting that together for the launch. And then I'm also making updates to Bigger, Leaner, Stronger and Thinner, Leaner, Stronger in light of a lot of the work that I did on this Muscle for Life book, because the editors I worked with were great, and they had good ideas on how to better organize information and just pointing out places where the information could be clearer, where there could be more examples given, where charts could be given just for easy reference. And so there was enough of that where I was like, I really didn't want to, like, this is not fun work, because for multiple reasons, dude. I mean, I've already done 3 official editions of these Bigger, Leaner, Stronger.
Well, now we're going to 4th edition, right?
I've done many editions. And so there's that where it would be more fun to work on something new. But then there's also the added...
you're like Gillette. You just keep adding blades to the razor, man.
Yeah, I know. And it's also because of the material. I mean, this is effectively, it serves as like a 10th, 11th, and 12th draft of the same material that I've been working on for a year or so. So it's, it's a slog, but I think it's a smart strategic move. And I think it just, because of how important my quote unquote flagship books are to my personal brand and to even Legion, I'm like, all right, whatever. I'm just gonna, dude, I'm just gonna gut it out and get it done.
It's what marks your work off, and I mean this sincerely, from the work of so many others, right? It's just, you put more time into it. It is higher quality. It's better research. It's better written. It's better organized. It's better presented. And I suspect that has some reason to do with why those books just crush it on Amazon, right? So cool. Yeah,
and that makes me think of a quote. Who said this? Oh, I'm not going to remember, but basically paraphrasing that, of many works, one could say, it could have been great if the creator only had a bigger appetite for suffering. And so it's just, I think I have a good appetite for suffering.
Yeah, because you're willing to do that.
Field, you just put your ass in the chair and you grind. You don't care about how you feel. You just get the work done like a professional.
War of art style. That's exactly it, man. We could do a whole conversation on that, because it's that's the whole difference, right? Is like whether somebody is willing to go through that horribly tedious slog or not.
The dip, as Seth Godin calls it, right?
The dip, yeah. Everyone's got a different term for it. Pressfield calls it resistance, right? Yep. Whatever you call it, we all know it when we get to it. The point is, are you willing to just deal with it or not? Yeah. And there's a good tie-in to fitness. I mean, it's in all areas of life. I mean, that's what makes Pressfield's book so great. Like, it's about writing, but it's really not, right? It's really just about anything that you pursue that is meaningful or worthwhile. Yep. So cool, man. Yeah, glad to hear that book's coming along well. I'm pumped for you, dude. So introduce us then now to the concept of concurrent training. What do we mean by this? Get it out on the table for us, and then we'll just develop it from there.
Yeah. So this is doing cardiovascular exercise, endurance exercise, and strength training. So training your heart and training your cardiovascular system and training your muscles. And many weightlifters, I mean, I'm not sure if this tide is changing, actually. I mean, my own personal position has changed, that's for sure. But many weightlifters traditionally have shunned cardio because it's, I mean, first and foremost, most people don't really enjoy it. So they're already inclined to just not do it. And then they've heard that if you do any cardio whatsoever, even low intensity stuff, maybe walking is okay, maybe, that it's going to get in the way of your muscle and strength gain. You're going to gain less muscle and strength, and you're going to get less out of your time in the gym doing the fun stuff, right? Yeah. And that is something that I had heard some time ago, and I didn't just swallow it blindly. It's something that I had passed on as something that is maybe true, but in the first edition of Bigger, Leaner, Stronger, for example, my position at that time was you should do as little cardio as you need to do to achieve your body composition goals, not no cardio. And if your goal, and this is, I was speaking to men, if a dude's goal was to get to 15% body fat, I was saying, you don't need to do any cardio to do that. You just don't. You can lift weights and you can just control your calories, eat enough protein, eat like an adult, as Dan John likes to say, eat some, nutritious food, and just there you go. And you can do that. And you may be able to get even leaner than that. You may be able to get into the lower teens. But if you want to get very lean, if you want to have full abs, and if you want to start even maybe getting a little bit of ab vascularity, which this stuff sounds ridiculous for people who aren't into fitness and body comp, but anybody who is understands, especially guys. I don't know why us guys, we just like veins. We just do. It's weird. I don't, who knows? There's probably a psychological deep dive that
I'm sure there is, right? But it is what it is. So
it is what it is, right? Yeah. And I mean, we can all relate to the aesthetic of having a lean body, but I don't know on the vascularity. I don't know what it is about that. But regardless, if you want to get as a guy, 10%, 9, 8, or even lower, you're almost certainly going to have to do cardio unless you are very active outside of the gym, which of course serves kind of as cardio. It burns energy, right? So if your job involves walking around and moving things, okay, fine. Then you may not need to do cardio because you're burning 700 calories a day in your job. But for those of us who are just desk jockeys, like we don't burn, I don't know how many calories this burns, but not much, not much. So the primary reason why, and this is men and women. For women, I would say for a woman who wants to get down to probably 20% or lower than that, almost certainly going to have to do cardio.
Okay.
And so that was my position at that time. Now my position is that it's not that I was that what I was saying previously was wrong. It's still true that you can get quite lean and look nice and athletic without doing cardio. Yeah. But I'm now a bigger proponent of cardio for two reasons. One, health benefits, particularly cardiovascular benefits that you don't get from exercise. And there's some other stuff too that I talk about in this upcoming Muscle for Life book related to telomeres and longevity. Yeah. And there are a few other benefits that appear to be unique to cardio. And fortunately, you don't have to do that much of it. It doesn't have to be bust a gut, all out high intensity cardio to get these benefits. So there's not much of a cost to these rewards. So that's one reason. And another reason is, and this is kind of interesting, that if you improve your cardiovascular fitness, you actually can improve your strength training. You can improve your performance with weights. And particularly, you can improve your ability to recover in between sets. Mm-hmm. And that is one of those, it's kind of like instead of hitting the gas, it's just taking your foot off the brake a little bit.
Yeah, there's sort of an indirect benefit there.
Exactly. And for people who are conscientious about their training, I mean, none of us watch or insist on 2 minutes and 30 seconds exactly of rest in between sets, or 3 minutes exactly, or 3.5. We're working within a range. Like for me, with an isolation exercise, a biceps curl, I'm going to rest between 2 and 2.5 minutes. If I go 3 minutes or beyond, it's because I was talking to somebody or whatever. But if I'm just doing my thing, paying attention, it's going to be around 2.5, maybe it's 2, depending on how easy the exercise was, my heart rate, right? And if it's a compound exercise, I'm always lifting pretty heavy weights, going close to failure. So my heart rate is higher, and it just there's more systemic fatigue that I want to rest out before I go to the next. And so that's probably going to be 3 to 3.5, rarely 4 minutes, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so somebody with poor cardiovascular fitness who follows the same type of protocol, which is what I recommend in Bigger, Leaner, Stronger and Beyond Bigger, Leaner, Stronger, Thinner, Leaner, Stronger, wherever I've written or spoken about rest times in between sets, those are the general recommendations. Somebody who goes then from poor cardiovascular fitness following those guidelines to good cardiovascular fitness is going to notice that they have more energy for their sets. They're just going to notice that the weights, especially if they pay attention through the process of improving their cardiovascular fitness, they're going to start to notice that they're able to get an extra rep or two with their working weights. The weights just feel a little bit lighter. Right. And that can then, that's one of those little things that in the short run doesn't really matter, but that can compound over time. And if you play that out over the course of years, maybe they gain 5% more muscle and strength because of that. Maybe it's only 3%.
Yeah.
But it's one of those little things.
It's an advantage, right? Yep. And that's a great point. It's like getting good quality sleep, right? It's like, okay, the first time that happens, maybe not a huge difference, maybe no difference, right? But over time, these things really add up. So, Mike, let me try and summarize, and you tell me if I'm right on this, right? So your kind of thinking has evolved on this from the. And again, you didn't just take in the I guess, I don't know what you would call it, the traditional bro science, like don't do cardio.
Like the maximalist.
Don't do cardio. You're going to lose all your gains type of world.
Yeah. And don't even lift weights in too high of rep ranges, because that's cardio too.
Because you'll be too skinny. Right. Yeah. That's cardio. Like anything over 5 reps is Zumba, right? That's the slogan. Right. So, okay. But, all right, maybe cardio is useful then for if you want to go from like, relatively lean to very lean. Maybe, all right. So that was kind of the initial consideration. But now, with your more recent work, you're saying, okay, actually, there's stronger reasons to do cardio. Yes, it can definitely help with body composition and leanness, but there's all these just general health benefits, right? Which we should all care about because life is good. And then there are indirect benefits from cardiovascular training that actually, in a very plausible way, could actually help you to perform better at your traditional strength training and gain more strength and muscle because of that. Is that a fair summary?
Totally. Yep.
Sweet.
And one other thing just to add is research has shown that certain types of cardio, like cycling in particular, because it mimics the squat movement, that can actually help with lower body development.
That makes sense from specificity standpoint.
Yeah. And it's a minor thing, but that's one reason why I personally do cycling. And what I do is I have an upright bike. I don't go outside and do it. I would recommend that for people who, aren't as, neurotic about how they use their time as I am. But what I do is I have an upright bike, and I either, if I have calls that I have to do, I save them for that when I wouldn't be able to do the calls driving and, riding around outside. It'd be too windy. So if I have work calls, I'll save them for when I'm on the bike. And if I don't have work calls, then I will read or I will listen to a podcast or listen to, I have like my little study routine, and I'll just continue it on the bike because I'm doing lower intensity. It's not low, but I'm not doing high intensity, which would make it impossible to do any of those things,
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that then. Let's start to kind of like define what we mean by cardio. So what do we mean in terms of like intensity, duration, activity? Let's just set some parameters here.
Yeah. And so this gets into how to best go about concurrent training, right? Cool. So how to combine your cardio and your weightlifting in a way that allows you to get most or all of the benefits, maybe not. Well, I can get into that. Most or all of the benefits of cardio without having to sacrifice much, if anything, in your weightlifting. And so for that, let's talk first about prioritizing low impact cardio, like cycling, rowing, swimming, skiing, if you can do that in the.
What about like a brisk walk or
sure,
brisk walk,
of course,
like
walking.
Cool. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Walking is great. Walking is I think a very underappreciated form of cardio because especially if you are decently fit and you can turn it into rucking, or just get a backpack and put stuff in it, like put 20 or 30 pounds of stuff in it and go walking around with that. You're going to burn quite a few more calories, and you're going to find it's a little bit more challenging for your cardiovascular system. And so as far as intensity goes, my general recommendation here is that you most of your cardio should be lower intensity. So if we're on a scale of 1 to 10, let's say 10 is an all-out sprint, high intensity, but true high intensity, meaning you probably can't even talk at all. If you can, it's in single words, like you're gasping. That's true high intensity training. Yeah, that's it. It needs to be very, very difficult. Yeah. If you're just breathing heavily, but you could, talk in full sentences, that's more like a 7. on the scale, right? And so I recommend that you keep it around 4 or 5. If you want to go even lower, like if you want to go just for a walk and it's a 1 or a 2, that's fine as well. Just be aware that like anything, I mean, you get what you pay for, right? So if it's very easy, you're not going to burn very many calories and you're not going to get too much in the way of like beneficial physiological effects. It does need to be a little bit challenging.
Sure.
And so to put that 4 or 5 out of 10 in perspective, I wouldn't record a podcast on the bike because I would be kind of breathing. It'd be a bit weird. I probably wouldn't. I would lose my train of thought here and there. But I can have a phone call. I can. I mean, it's usually.
I like these sort of like these sort of qualitative assessments. So I like. All right, I wouldn't record a podcast, but I could have a conversation with somebody who they don't care if I'm a little sloppy, right?
Exactly. Or I tell them like, I'm going to be breathing a little bit, and I may need you to repeat things now and then, which actually hasn't been too much of a problem unless I'm trying to go a little bit too hard. But usually I'm just a little bit winded, right. and that's it. But I otherwise can.
Yeah, that's good because that really that people latch on to that. Right. Then they do just an abstract number like that. That makes sense. Mm-hmm.
Totally. Yeah. It's kind of like RPE versus reps in reserve, where if you're trying to rate, your perception of effort, was that an 8 out of 10? It can be more difficult. I prefer just thinking, how many reps do I have left? Oh, I had 2 reps left. Okay, good. Like that's easy and intuitive. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so intensity, you can include some high intensity stuff, but I would recommend, again, if we're talking about your primary goal is to continue gaining muscle and strength, then I would recommend no more than probably about an hour or so per week. And let's just give that as a range, 30 to 60 minutes of high intensity work a week, if you want to do high intensity work.
Right. So then in terms of just the other forms of cardio, what's sort of minimum effective dose that, because you said you don't have to do a whole lot of it, right? So what's the kind of baseline minimum you'd recommend for people?
A baseline minimum would probably be 30 minutes, 30 to 60 minutes would be a minimum. 60 is going to be better than 30. And like anything, as you do more, the benefits begin to taper off. There's a significant difference between doing 30 minutes a week and 60 or 90 minutes. And there's less of a difference if we're talking about the benefits we're after between 60 and 90 and double that, right?
Right, yeah.
But duration is a key point, especially, again, if we want to minimize this interference effect. And a good rule of thumb, real simple, is I recommend limiting your total cardio. So this would be low, moderate, high intensity, all of it, limiting it to no more than half of the amount of time you spend training your muscles. So if you lift weights or do any sort of resistance training, whatever you do for 4 hours a week, I would recommend no more than 2 hours of cardio per week. And with that added stipulation of no more than an hour of high intensity stuff. Got it. For people wondering, what about, should I be doing high intensity? My position on this has changed a bit too, because years ago, when there was less research available on it, scientists thought that high intensity interval training not only burned more calories in less time than steady state cardio, which is of course true because it's hard, much harder. But they thought there also may be some unique mechanisms whereby high intensity interval training burns more fat for the calories burned, right? Yeah. And so they thought it was just a 360 degree win, right? And now I would say the scientific consensus is the latter is probably not true, but the former is certainly true. If you want to burn as many calories in your 20 to 30 minutes per session, which is another thing that I'd recommend, probably no more than 45 minutes in an individual session. So if you want to get the most calorie burn and of course, therefore the most fat loss out of that session, yes, high intensity. And there's also some research to indicate that there are probably some additional health benefits to including at least probably 30 to 45 minutes of high intensity work in your routine every week. But that's we're now in the realm of like the 80% that gives you the 20% for people who really want to do everything they can to squeeze every ounce of bounce out of their cardio, then I would say, yeah, let's add some high intensity. But I don't even do that right now for no great reason. I guess it's just I feel like I'm doing enough and I like my routine. And if I were doing high intensity, that's all I could do. I couldn't take calls. I couldn't read. I couldn't listen to anything. And so what I do is 30 minutes of steady state, 6 or 7 days per week, which is about half of the amount of time I spend training my muscles.
So, all right. So this is really great, Mike. This is very helpful. Now, when you're doing your steady state, where is that falling in relation to your traditional strength training? Are you doing it right after? Would you recommend people do it after? Can it be later in the day? What do we got there?
Yeah, good question. So this brings me to another point. Another tip is to separate your cardio and your strength training by as much time as you can. So ideally, you would do them on separate days. So if somebody, let's say they lift 3 days per week, then they have 4 days that they can do cardio on.
So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they're lifting. All the other days you're doing cardio. That would be the simplest way to go about it.
Yeah, right? or not. They don't have to do all, but sure, if they wanted to be active every single day, which I think is a good plan, by the way, then
I agree.
That's what I would recommend. And where that's not possible, so let's say somebody like me, I lift weights 5 days a week. What I was doing some time ago, before COVID, actually, I ramped up my cardio during COVID because I was like, I guess I'm not driving to the office, which is where my gym was. I was saving some time there. I'm like, I'll just do some more cardio. And I had, like, I would be driving and taking calls. Well, this way I'll just go on the bike and take calls. And anyway, so if somebody's lifting 5 days a week, they could do their cardio just on the weekends. If they want to just do 2 sessions per week, if they want to get in an hour or so of cardio per week, which is totally fine. But if they want to do more for the reasons that I've given, if they want to, for example, let's say they're cutting and they just want to make it a little bit easier to lose fat, because something nice about raising your energy expenditure is you get to eat more food, even when you're cutting, right? And that's that'd be a different discussion, but there's this idea of quote unquote energy flux, meaning, okay, you need to hit this calorie deficit to lose your fat. Should you move as much as you can, and then it allows you to eat more food? Or should you just move less and eat less? Is there any difference between those things? And there does appear to be a difference. And for purposes of body composition and just mitigating the negative side effects of dieting, it appears to be better to be as active as you can. I mean, obviously you can take that too far, to be as active as you can so you can eat as much as you can, because there's a point where and researchers have looked at this in terms of calories per pound, or they looked at it in kilogram of lean mass. And if your calories per, we'll just say pound of lean mass dips between a certain threshold, the body responds in negative ways. And so anyway, if you want to do more cardio for that reason, or you just want to get a bit more health benefits out of it, okay, now you're going to have to, like, I do cardio and I lift on the same days. And 2 tips for that are one, I would recommend lifting first. So make that your first workout of the day. When you are going to have more energy. It doesn't matter what time it is, right? So you could lift. So my little routine is I wake up between 6 and 6:30, depending. I'm in bed for 8 hours. I have to be pretty disciplined about that, unfortunately, because I'm not as great of a sleeper as I was when I was younger. And
you and me both, my friend. Yeah,
kids, you understand. And so I'm in bed between 10 and 10:30. Like I wanted to watch the Lightning hockey game yesterday because I'm from Tampa, so I went to bed at 10:30. So I'm wake up at 6:30. If I'm going to bed early, I'll wake up at 6, right? And then I have an infrared sauna. I go sit in that thing and I read for 45 to 60 minutes, usually, maybe a little bit longer. Rarely less time than that.
Sure.
And then I do a little stretching routine after, just as a maintenance thing, because I have a couple, they're not problem areas. It's just, I would say, anatomical dispensations. Like I have to keep my quads, if I don't do a couple simple stretches, my quads will get tight, and then that'll have negative effects in the gym, and my hip flexors will get tight, same, and my shoulder, my bicipital groove area will get kind of stuck and whatever, right? So I do that, and then I eat a banana, and then I have some pre-workout, stim free, and I have espresso. I make like a cappuccino, 4 shots of espresso, and then I go to the gym. So now I get there.
You separate your pre-workout and the stim. I like that.
I put it all together.
Right. No, like you don't do the pre-workout with the stim. You'd rather have the good espresso.
No, the reason I heard it the other way is when I was posting, I posted that on Instagram, and quite a few people asked if I'm putting the pre-workout in the coffee. No, why would I do that?
That's the point of that, right? Then I would just have caffeine in the pre-workout, right?
Yeah, that's not the way to do it. I don't need blue raspberry flavored
espresso.
Yeah, and anyway, so do that. Go to the gym. I'm there. Let's say between 8 and 8:30. Sometimes as late as 9, just depending on. I'm a little bit loosey-goosey in the beginning, in the morning, because I like to make sure I get in enough time reading, and that's important to me for many reasons. So I'm okay if I'm going a little bit over my normal time, because I'm just making more progress on my learning. I'm okay with that. And so I'm in the gym in the morning. So I do that, and then I wait until about 6 p.m. to do my cardio. So that's the tip, is if you are doing cardio and lifting on the same day, try to lift first, and then just try to put as many hours in between the 2 workouts as you can.
Got it.
And we don't have to get into the technical details as to why. It just has to do with the messages, quote unquote, that your body is getting from lifting and from cardio. The adaptations that occur are they're not complementary.
So you're saying don't stack them back to back.
You can
at least try and put some space in between.
Correct.
If you can.
Correct. Yep. Ideally, it would be at least 3 hours. Better is 6+ hours. But as much time really as you can put in between them. And if you have to do them back to back, that's okay. I would not say to somebody, oh, then just don't do the cardio. No, I would say do it after you're lifting. And ideally, you would probably do it. I would recommend doing it, if it's possible, on upper body workout days, if you're going to do it after, not on lower body workout. But that's a minor point, not too important. So that's the best way to combine them. And I mean, you just have to also understand that you can only emphasize one of these adaptations, the strength and the muscle, or the cardio and the endurance. So again, if somebody's primary focus is the strength and the muscle, then they would want to follow the guidelines that I've given. But if they, for whatever reason, because of a sport they play, or they want to run a marathon or a half marathon or a Tough Mudder or whatever, if they're really trying to focus on improving their cardiovascular endurance, then we would have to actually change that up a bit. I've worked with people who have run marathons, for example, and anybody who has run a marathon knows that I haven't, because I really don't like running. I've never liked it. I've always liked sports, but just going out for a run, I never came to like it. But the volume of the cardio gets pretty high. Of the running that they have to do just to get up to the level that's required to finish a marathon, let alone do well. And so what you have to do is you have to taper down your weightlifting. What you don't want to do, and I've had many people reach out to me over the years, trying to do 5 strength training workouts per week, plus running every single day. And I mean, putting in a lot of time, like 15 to 25 hours per week, pounding the pavement. Don't do that. What does work is going down to 2 or even 1 strength training workout a week, just toward the end of that period when you're ramping up your cardio volume. So if it's 2, maybe it's just an upper body and a lower body, and maybe those workouts are not even as difficult as you normally would train. Maybe they're a bit more submaximal, meaning that maybe you're finishing your hard sets with always with at least 3 reps in reserve, for example, right? You're not going to that 1 where you're kind of just grinding it out, or 0 where it's really a grind, right? And especially on the big compound lifts. And if it's 1 workout a week, it could just be a full body, and that could just be the big movements. And again, you're loading the bar with decently heavy weight, but you are never missing sets, for example. You're not pushing to failure. And So that's, again, just something for people to think with. It depends on what your goal is, right?
Yeah, as always. But no, the structure has been super helpful. Mike, would you mind if we took a few questions from the audience here?
Sure. Yeah.
Let's do it. This is cool. All right.
I should probably mention one more thing. I just want people to know the importance of just quickly deloading and make sure that, deloading is important, period, where you just reduce the intensity of your strength training for usually a week, at least 3 days, usually 5 days, or like an entire week of training.
Do you just reduce intensity or do you reduce volume? What does the structure of your deload look like?
There are different ways to do it. And I'll talk about as much as you want, but
give us a quick hit right now. Yeah.
Here, what I like to do, and this is in my Beyond Bigger, Leaner, Stronger program in particular, is I like to keep the weights heavy. So I'll use my normal working weights, but instead of doing one of the differences between Bigger, Leaner, Stronger and Beyond Bigger, Leaner, Stronger is Beyond Bigger, Leaner, Stronger, which is for intermediate and advanced weightlifters, has more volume. So you're doing usually 12 to 16 hard sets per workout as opposed to 9 to 12 in Bigger, Leaner, Stronger. Yeah. So when I get on that bench press, instead of doing 4 sets of let's say I'm doing 6s that week, I'm going to do 2 sets. So I'm cutting that volume in half with heavy weight, but I'm going to do 2 or 3 fewer reps.
Got it. So you keep
reduction.
You keep intensity the same, but volume and maybe density go down.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, and then for my isolation exercises, for the easier stuff, you can go from 4 to 2, like make the same cut and do 2 or 3 fewer reps than you'd normally do. So let's say you're working in the 8 to 10 rep range in your biceps curls and you normally do 4 sets. You could do 2 and get sets of like 5 or 6, maybe 7, depending on like, did you get 10s previously or did you get 8s or 9s? Again, just shave a couple reps off. I found that 3 is okay for me. So I do 3 instead of 4, but I would recommend that people start with, again, cutting the volume basically in half in terms of hard sets and reducing the number of reps by a few that you did with that weight in your last workout, but keep the weight heavy.
Awesome.
And so.
Awesome. Cool. Sweet. All right. Gentle listeners, if you have any questions for the mighty Mike, send them on in and we'll work through a couple here.
This is cool. Look at that.
Yeah, isn't that neat? Yeah, Mike hopped on here. He's like, "What is this software?" I'm like, "It is the StreamYard."
I'm so out of the loop. Yeah. Is this? Yeah, I'm like a boomer. Like, how do you open? Is this a PDF?
Well, we have Enrique here. He wants to. Mike, you kind of talked about this, but we'll maybe just address it more specifically. He says, "Could you do cardio, hypertrophy, and strength in one session?" I think I heard Dan talk about doing these 3 in different sessions, but could they be done in the same day?
Sure. I would agree with Dan that ideally they'd be done. Certainly the cardio and hypertrophy and strength. I'm not exactly sure. We may have different, I wouldn't say definitions, but we may be talking about different things when we say hypertrophy versus strength. Like when I hear strength, I'm thinking probably what he's thinking, which is your heavy lifting. Let's say sets of 6 reps or fewer. Yeah. And you're coming close to failure, not pushing to failure, but you're pushing pretty hard, right? And I would understand hypertrophy training as probably 7s or 8s and above, regardless of the exercise, though. Right. And but I personally don't particularly like that distinction because I guess it's an arbitrary way to refer to higher or lower reps, but it implies that the strength training doesn't result in muscle growth or
vice versa.
Yeah, or vice versa, which is not true. But regardless,
it's at best an exceedingly blurry distinction, right?
And I think it's a little bit moth-eaten. It was a paradigm that I don't think is in line with the scientific evidence. Right. On muscle building and strength gain anymore.
Right, because you can gain muscle at lower reps and you can gain strength at higher reps. So it's like,
and especially if your training involves both lower and higher rep. I think what is still valid and what would be borne out by research and just anecdotal experience, myself, many other people, is if you never do heavy low rep sets, if all you do is 8s, 10s, 12s, 15s, 20s, you can gain muscle and you're going to get stronger, or at least you're going to improve your potential for strength. But if you were to do that for a year, right, and then you plug your numbers into a 1RM calculator, and it says that you should be able to squat 380 for 3 based on what you normally do, and you only were doing 8s, 10s, 12s. If you were to load that bar with 380, you're not going to get 3. It's not going to happen. You probably won't even get 1 because you have to groove in the differences in technique. Not that the exercise changes, but how it feels changes when you really load that bar. Right. And there is something to be said again for, you could think of quote unquote calibrating your muscle to express its strength potential, and that requires specificity. Like if you want to be strong, you got to lift heavy weights, and that means lower reps, right? And so anyways, I think it's perfectly reasonable to combine strength training and hypertrophy training in the same workout if your goal is improving your body composition. If you're maybe an athlete and that's really Dan's specialty, there could be arguments for why they should be separated. But I think for most people listening, I would say there's no downside to working like reverse pyramid style training if you want to do it that way, or a daily undulating periodization if you want to do it that way. I think those methods are not best suited to probably most just lifestyle bodybuilders. There are simpler ways. Like in my Beyond Bigger, Leaner, Stronger program, I use a weekly periodization program. Yep. So you do a week of 10s, a week of 8s, a week of 6s and 4s. And I explain in the book why. And then as far as the cardio goes, as I've said, best would be to separate it all together. Totally agree. If you can't do that and you are sold on the idea of doing cardio, then I would say you don't have to, don't shy away from it simply because you can't separate it even by an hour. Like I say, you have to do it after your strength and your hypertrophy training. Again, that's fine. So long as you limit the duration. Don't do too much high intensity work. Don't do high impact stuff. Like don't, in the past, when I was doing more high intensity stuff, I was running sprints outside because I actually kind of liked that. I don't like jogging. I like sprinting.
I'm with you.
And the problem though, is it just beats the shit out of you. Like it just got in the way of my squatting and my deadlifting. I was perpetually sore. I just couldn't adapt to it. And that's when I was in my earlier mid-20s and sleeping perfectly. And I was physiologically as invincible as I could possibly be. And I still couldn't, I couldn't cut it. So,
Cool. Good. Saul just says, cheers from Minnesota. Well, cheers to you, dude.
What's up, Saul?
Here's a question about specificity, Mike. Would you count higher rep, but low weight kettlebell swings as cardio?
Interesting. It depends how high rep we're talking and how close to muscle or muscular failure you're coming, right? Yeah. So let's say you're doing sets of 20 or 30 and you are pushing to the point of not only muscle failure, but now you're talking about cardiovascular failure, like exhaustion. I actually wouldn't recommend that in general. Again, if you're going to do that stuff, save it for your high intensity because you have to push to the point of exhaustion. But just how in your strength training, it's not smart to continually push yourself to muscular failure. Or I don't even recommend once you get strong after your first year or so, I don't recommend taking your compound exercises to even a 1 rep in reserve every set. Like, okay, if that's your last set reps in reserve, let's say you're doing 3 or 4 sets and it goes like this. The first set, you get your reps and you feel like I could probably get 2 or 3 more. Like this is how my training generally goes. Second set was a solid 2. Like, I don't think I could have gotten 3. Third set is a 2-ish, right? Fourth set is usually a 1, but not a 0. Like I know I could get a solid 1, maybe 2. And so just how it would not be smart, again, to start like set 1, 0 hour, grind it out, 0 reps in reserve. That was it. That was the last, or even just 1. Like, God, if I really, if the proverbial gun were to my head, I could have gotten 1 more.
Right.
I wouldn't recommend that. So in the cardio, I also would not recommend pushing yourself to exhaustion on a regular basis. And so coming back to this question, I think it certainly could count as cardio, but it would need to be higher reps for sure, because now we're working into even on the strength and endurance continuum for muscles, right? As we go into higher rep ranges, 10 plus in particular, and certainly 20 plus, now we're working more on our muscle endurance. We're creating more cellular fatigue as opposed to mechanical tension and muscle damage. And that's totally fine for improving muscle endurance and cardiovascular endurance. You also should be feeling your heart racing, right? If maybe racing's a little bit sensational, but you certainly should notice your heart rate is elevated. And I think it's fine to use resistance training as cardio, but it really should be, again, higher reps. So certainly, I mean, we're going to be talking swings. It's going to be 20 plus. Yeah. And even when you're doing that, I would not recommend as a baseline level of effort, like always going all out. Like always.
Yeah. There's a I don't know if you ever played around with this, Mike, but there's a traditional, I like it, a traditional VO2 max protocol with kettlebells, but it's like this. It's 15 seconds on, 15 seconds off for like 30 minutes with a very light kettlebell, and you're typically doing snatches instead of swings. So something like that might fit the bill, as they say, right?
Totally. Yep.
Sweet. All right, let's keep moving along here. Saul says, may not be elite cardio and strength, but you can be above average with consistent training. I'm 51. He's 155 pounds. He deadlifts 385, benches 225. Nice. Recently won a 12:55 2 mile. He runs 3 times a week, bikes 3 times a week, and lifts 4 times weekly. Recovery is key. So not really.
That's great. That's impressive, and I agree with what he's saying. And of course, I believe these numbers. This is not outside the realm of possibility for quote unquote normal everyday people. Like, you don't have to have elite genetics and live for fitness to do that. That's just the result of probably a lot. He's probably been doing this for a while. And this brings me to another point that's just worth mentioning is just how with your training, you have to gradually increase your volume and your intensity over time.
Right.
If you're new, you don't want to jump into even a program like my Beyond Bigger, Leaner, Stronger program. I wouldn't recommend that for new people because it's unnecessarily hard. You're going from 0 to 15 to 16 hard sets per major muscle group per week. You're working into some heavy weights, 95% on the bar for AMRAP at the end of, you don't save that for when you're stronger and fitter. And same thing with cardio, like you just had alluded to with this, this kettlebell protocol, is you want to gradually increase your volume of cardio over time if you want to work up to a high level of it, like what Saul is doing. Right. I would not recommend somebody watching or listening I would not recommend that they hear that and just go, I could probably do that. I'm like halfway there. I'll just see what happens. Yeah.
Right. Good reminder. Here's one that's we can turn this into a general, what's the value of coaching question, I think, Mike. So gentle listener Deo says, good morning. He's got black coffee here it's so hot it could be dangerous, Arizona. Now, if he were to attend a 1-day SFG certified, or if I'm sorry, I'm having trouble reading this. It's probably me today. I just talk about not getting good sleep. Here's the question that I'm going to summarize it. Is it a good idea to get a private instruction from a certified instructor? Is that necessary for around $120? Now, he's asking about this in sort of the kettlebell specific world. And Mike, you can certainly offer your thoughts on that specification, but I would like your thoughts generally in where you think the role of hiring a coach or instructor would come into this, because probably you get this question a lot, right? Is it enough for me just to kind of get your book and walk into the gym and just kind of like figure the rest out as I go, or should I dole out $120 for a session and get a little tune up beforehand? What are your general thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to this exact question because I'm not familiar with what he's referring to.
SFG is the Strong First Kettlebell organization.
That's Pavel, right?
Yeah, it's Pavel's organization.
Yeah, I know that. I just don't know the specifics, so I don't know how valuable that instruction is in terms of hiring somebody to walk you through it. But I could say generally, to your point of just picking up a book or even reading articles and just doing it yourself versus paying for coaching. I mean, one of the things I've always tried to do, and I think I'm doing it the best I've ever done in these updates that I'm doing to Bigger, Leaner, Stronger and Thinner, Leaner, Stronger is I really wanted to try to give people everything that they need to go it alone and do well. I love hearing from people. I get a lot of emails and messages, and people have a lot of good questions, but my goal, at least the standard of quality that I've strived toward with my books, is that people would reach out maybe to tell me that they like the book and they're going to keep me posted, or maybe they have just like a random question that it wouldn't have made sense to address in the book. But ideally, nobody would ever reach out to me because something was unclear or just unanswered, or they ran into a common obstacle that I should have foreseen. You know what I mean? So, I think that one of the reasons my books have done well is I've done a pretty good job of that over the years. And again, I think I'm doing a really good job of it in this latest round of updates. And that's also one of the reasons why I've always offered a lot in the way of bonus material that other people would probably charge money for. Like, for example, a year of workouts, and this is free, and you don't even have to read the book to get the bonus material. You just have to put in your email address, whatever. And a lot of people have read the book, but I'm sure that link gets passed around as well, because if you download the material, it has all of the key takeaways from the book. So it just refreshes you on all the key points that you need to know to follow the program. And it gives you, like in a spreadsheet, a year's worth of workouts that I've put together following the principles that you've learned about. And so it's almost as if I'm kind of coaching, like, here, just do this. And so I'm even trying to make the bonus material stand on its own if somebody just comes across it. And so I would say to the question of when is coaching, I mean, it's probably not, it's rarely necessary, but maybe when is it indicated? It depends on the goals, right? So if somebody is just looking to get fit, so for men, let's say it's usually gaining about 20 to 30 pounds of muscle and getting to somewhere between 10 and 15% body fat. And most guys, at least most guys who find their way into my orbit, who read Bigger, Leaner, Stronger and reach out to me, that's what they're going for. That's the first big milestone. Now, often you get there and then you are already kind of looking off to the horizon again, but they are at least very happy with what they've got at that point. And to do that, most people don't need a coach. You really don't. If you're the type of person who doesn't need much in the way of accountability, some people have place a lot of value on that, which is smart because they know themselves. They know that if they pay somebody, it's going to drastically increase their compliance. Then that is understandable. But then some people go, nah, I like my workouts. I like my meal plan. I'm not running into any problems with compliance and consistency, so I don't need to pay for that. Yeah. And some people, they like to pay for the expertise because they're very inquisitive and they always have questions and they're hearing things and they want a trusted expert they can go to. And some people are not like that. It really depends on, I hear from many people who, again, they read one of my books like Bigger, Leaner, Stronger or Thinner, Leaner, Stronger, and that really is it for them. That it answered all the questions that they needed answered, and it gave them a clear path to victory. And they are just doing that. And they maybe listen to some of my podcasts, read some of my other articles here and there, but on the whole, they weren't looking to just learn as much as they can about health and fitness. They wanted to achieve a goal and they found a way to get there, and that's enough for them, right? Yeah. And awesome. So that person would not, get as much from coaching. And then there are maybe the higher order goals, fitness goals. So if someone wants to compete in natural bodybuilding or just whatever, maybe not natural, if they want to compete in bodybuilding, then they are going to benefit from a coach. Once you decide to become a specialist, that's where coaching makes a lot of sense. I totally agree. And so that would apply to athletics. That would, I don't think, be necessarily apply to body composition, because fortunately it just doesn't get, in terms of the mechanics, it doesn't get all that more complex or difficult to go from, let's say you've gained 80% of the muscle and strength available to you genetically, right?
Yeah.
And you want to strive for that final 20%. Unlike an activity unlike going from just a body comp lifestyle bodybuilder guy to a professional bodybuilder, like that's a whole nother, it's a completely different game, right? It's not just taking what you're doing to a little bit higher level. It's, changing from the little local, get meat up to like trying to compete on a local or state level or whatever. Right. Yeah. And so if somebody, again, is just trying to get the most that they can out of their body comp, a coach can be a shortcut. And many people also, I should mention that many people are happy to pay. They know that they could read one of my books. They know that, for example, they could read Bigger, Leaner, Stronger and Beyond Bigger, Leaner, Stronger, and they could learn, I think, everything they need to know to really, I would say, achieve, let's just say 95% plus of their potential for muscle, certainly for muscle strength, maybe not so much, because there is a bit of an art to that, and that's not my focus in those books. But again, for body comp goals, that's really everything that they're going to need to know. Awesome. But many people, and I understand many people are busy. For example, we work with a lot of entrepreneurs and like executives in companies and other people who just live very busy lives. They would rather just have somebody, they don't need to know all the whys. They don't
just tell me what to do.
Exactly. They don't need to be sold on the science of it. Like, they trust me, they trust my coaches, and they're like, you just tell me what to do. Here are the foods here's what I like to eat. I'll
cognitive offload. Right. Boom. Mm-hmm.
I'll fill out your little thing. You make me the meal plans. You tell me what to do in the gym. I'll do it. Thank you. Moving on with my life. And that's also a big benefit of coaching. I
appreciate that mentality. Hey, that was a really good and thorough answer. So thank you for that, Mike. Let's do like one more, and then we'll, you cool with that?
Yeah.
Cool.
Sorry, one sec. Let me, because there's somebody who's like cleaning rugs and he may need me. Okay.
Bring him in. All right. Thanks, Corey, for the super chat.
What questions do you have for
the
specialist in cleaning my kids' stains off of my belongings?
Love it. Corey says, what about the super strong 20 rep squat routine for combining strength and cardio? What do you know about this, Mike?
I actually didn't know that's a thing, but that's not a good. I would say for again, if we're talking everyday people, body comp people, who are natural and just looking to get strong, get big, get lean, stay healthy, I wouldn't recommend doing 20 rep squats, because why? Well, one, it's terrible.
Well, have you ever done it? Like,
do it once. do it once and ask yourself if you ever want to do it again. Right. Now it can't just be 20 rep, because I'm sure it's not just do 20 reps. Sure. Okay. What if I just take the bar and do 20 reps? Does that count? No. Yeah. It's going to be 20 reps close to muscular failure, right? Yeah. That means that that's going to be the most difficult set of squats you've probably ever done. I mean, in my Beyond Bigger, Leaner, Stronger program, it starts in a macro cycle. You're doing sets of 10s, right? And then it goes down eventually to sets of 2s, and sets of 10 on the deadlift in particular. That's the hardest shit I've ever done. That's harder than sets of 10 on the squat. I mean, it is fucking exhausting. So sets of 20 on the squat, again, terrible. You're never going to want to do it again. And so good luck trying to stick to that type of routine. Right. And two, I would say that it can be dangerous, if deadlift more so actually, but it still can be dangerous if you're not an experienced weightlifter and you haven't really ingrained proper form, because as we've all experienced this, as we get deeper into a set, our technique just gets worse. And like for me, when I'm squatting, I have to consciously pay attention to my knees and keep them pointing out, or they will start to buckle. Now, it's not ridiculous, and there's maybe a couple inches of movement, which doesn't really matter, but I'm kind of I don't know, OCD about these things. I just want it to be not perfect. I want it to be really good.
I'm with you.
You know what I mean? And so you're doing sets of 20 on the squat, and those final 5 reps are going to be extremely difficult. And the chance of injury goes up, especially when the weights get heavy. Now, if you're brand new and you're literally putting 75 pounds on the bar, no, you're fine. But if you are fairly strong and now you're loading the bar with 200 to 300 pounds, let's say, or just even low 200s, high 100s, you're trying to do sets of 20, chances of getting hurt go up. Now, that's not to say that doing 20 rep sets, I don't want to say, because I'm not familiar with this programming, I don't want to say that, oh, it's just dumb and don't ever do it. I'm just saying that I don't think that's appropriate for,
as a general rule, I agree,
lifestyle bodybuilders again. And I would consider myself that, I'm just a guy who likes to work out and likes to be relatively strong and look relatively good.
Right. Just because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should or even have to. So always a good reminder. Hey, Mike Matthews, before we wrap up here, give us all of the good details on where people can check out all the stuff that you do and why they should do so. So tell us about Muscle for Life. Tell us about your podcast, anything and everything you want to mention. Let's hear about it.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks again for having me too. I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, it's always a blast, man.
So yeah, I would say my online hub really is legionathletics.com, which is my sports nutrition company as well. But that's where you can find my podcast, Muscle for Life. Of course, you can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts, but everything gets posted up there. I have a lot of articles, hundreds and hundreds at this point from me. And I also have a team of people who write with me, not as me or for me, but, publish under their names, and a lot of good stuff from them as well. I mean, we're well over 1,000 articles, long form, well written as well as we can, and well researched. Everything is cited, and so a lot of good questions have been answered over there. And my books you can find in the store, you can find on Amazon and elsewhere wherever you buy books. And I'm on social media. I'm not very active, but if you want to follow me, and I'm pretty consistent with posting my workouts to stories just to show people that I practice what I preach, and maybe give people a little motivation as well. I know people reach out to me and say they like seeing me doing my workouts because they're following the same type of programming and it's fun for them and motivating. So at Muscle for Life Fitness on Instagram. And I may get more active there at some point, but I really don't like social media. I think it'd be better if we all just deleted our Instagram. But so long as it exists, I'll use it to try to just spread the gospel of gains, right?
I'm into that, brother. So, hey, Mike Matthews, always a pleasure. I'll link all those in the show notes so people have easy access to those awesome resources. Again, cannot recommend your work enough. Your podcast is also spectacular. So do yourself a favor, gentle listeners, go check it all out. And we'll do it again soon, Mike.
Thanks, brother.